Justice League Incarnate, issue 4. This is Joshua Williamson with a lot of artists.
I mean, at least with this one, it's dealing with different eras, you know. So
do you think
I
because
understand
he's obviously writing a lot of books right now? Is it possible he is slightly behind on some of his scripts compared to some other writers, and it gets sent to artists later, and that's why it's multiple?
I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe he just really wants to work on Batman. He wants to work with Molina and Yanin, but that's the only time they could fit it in. You know.
I don't know.
So.
But yeah, so this issue, it's in 2 halves basically, right? There's 2 halves to this issue. The first half is kind of trying to contextualize all of the different crises we've had, including the Metal Wars, which that's what they call it, the Metal Wars, which is a fine name to pair them together. And I think Convergence was in there. I was lost on that page because I'm like, was this Convergence? Are they talking about Convergence right now? I don't know. But it's basically recontextualizing all those crises in the context of what's currently going on and what's coming, which is before the universe began, there was just nothing. Nothing and something were the same. It was just the darkness. And this infinite darkness doesn't like that stuff began. And it's been trying to break through ever since. So everything, all the crises that have happened in some way can kind of be traced back to the influence of the darkness wanting to just basically break everything down. As it says later on, the darkness doesn't want things to end. It wanted things to never begin.
Right. So that's what puts them at odds with Darkseid, who's about anti-life, because anti-life's not great, but it's something.
Well, it basically boils down to, remember Spike and Buffy, how he ended up trying to help Buffy fight Angelus because he's like, I don't want to destroy the world. I like killing people. If there's no world, I can't kill anyone. Right? That's basically the logic here, is Darkseid, I want to rule the universe. I can't rule the universe or the multiverse if there's nothing there.
It's funny. It's similar to the other Williamson book from last week. It was, I think it was Matt talking about Deathstroke Inc. with the Council of Villains that hey, we're going to keep the supervillains in check because we want to make money.
That's right, and that's kind of what that is that it feels like that's what the spectrum is now. It's not like, the villains don't want to destroy the world. They want their piece of it.
Yeah. Just seems funny to have this idea in 2 Williamson books. In 2 books,
I think
right?
This one obviously seems a bigger deal because it's building to the next big thing that's happening. It says after Crisis, like, because they took away the multiverse and there was only one universe left, that this was kind of a compromise, but the light and the darkness had sort of like, okay, you just have one universe, so the darkness isn't too unhappy.
Right, yeah.
But basically, even though it wasn't intentionally doing anything, the darkness, like, subtly still affected people, which is what led to, the following events, your 0 Hour, your Infinite Crisis, so on and so on. Darkseid then learned of the infinite darkness and chose to get involved, and that kind of led to Final Crisis. So, all these things. Connor's leaving right now, but see, when all these big events start, he's going to be wishing he knew all this, because this is all super relevant. I'm pointing it out right now.
Is it, though?
I mean,
look, I'm a continuity wonk.
To an extent. I mean...
And this felt like a waste of an issue. This should have been like a guidebook kind of deal. Just with the way this was set up in Infinite Frontier with Darkseid and the Great Darkness, and it seemed like he wanted to harness it. And now this is just Perpetua again to me. It's very redundant. And maybe that's the point.
I don't think that's... I'm not really getting Perpetua, but I will say that I have no problem with the general idea that it's saying by sort of trying to tie in all the crisis and everything into this. But
I like that idea.
It could just be a couple of pages saying generally everything that's ever happened in DC is the idea that the darkness is infecting people and wanting this end result of like deconstructing existence. But I mean, I guess he just kind of wanted to kind of do this summary of all the big events, all the big crises, and just sort of put them into a through line that says this is all building till now, which is one of the things that sometimes comic books could just go away from, is like the only way we can top things or make things feel bigger than they were before is to say somehow they were all just a part of this next thing that's happening. And they do it over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what John did with Infinite Crisis, right? It was a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it brought back the multiverse. But everything had to have happened. It's like what they say with the Abrams Star Trek, is that everything has to happen as it happens in the original Star Trek series for Spock to show up in that first movie. So it doesn't wipe anything away, it just perpetuates a new version. It's kind of what Williamson's doing here with the history of the DC universe.
Yeah. I will say, though, by the time it got past Final Crisis and it started doing what I think was some convergence stuff, and it got to Metal, there's a point where I was like, okay, this is almost too much nonsense to read about in one swoop, where I'm like, I feel like simplifying this down might have been a wiser choice. But basically the framing for this is that Dr. Multiverse is saying all this and saying, no, Darkseid is a natural enemy of the darkness because Darkseid does want things to exist, and that's why she said Darkseid has to win. And that's where we sort of come back into the story about halfway through the issue, and they're all like, wait, what? No, we can't believe in that. That's silly. But ultimately Darkseid's like, yeah, you fools, like, I'm going to stop the darkness, so how about you help me or not? I don't care which. Let's just do it. Dr. Batman, as we're calling him now, tries to kill Dr. Multiverse with a syringe, and then gets infected with the darkness, the darkness starts speaking through him, and then Darkseid's like, screw this, Omega beams, and seemingly, just like that, Thomas Wayne from the Flashpoint Dark Multiverse universe is gone. He's dead.
Yeah, but we know what the Omega Sanction did to Bruce. Sent him hurtling through time.
That's true.
So I almost feel like this is also written by Dennis Culver, who's going to be one of the writers on the Flashpoint book that's coming back out. So I'm wondering if this is that back door to send him back home.
I see.
Because if you send him to darkness, to nothingness, that's where Flashpoint is now. Because it ceased to be.
That makes some sense. Yeah. So Darkseid takes the crack from Dr. Multiverse, and then
I know Williamson's a competent writer. I like most of what I read from Williamson. I refuse to believe that he couldn't find a better name and he likes using it so we can call it the Multiverse's crack or Darkseid's crack, because I think it makes him laugh.
Even before this, though, Dr. Multiverse says, I took the crack and put it inside me. Like, just lines like that. Like, like, how can we not laugh at that?
Yeah, I feel like he's doing it on purpose because he's too good of a writer not to, and there's editors and there's better ways to phrase this. He's like, no, this is what we're doing because it's funny. That's what I want to believe anyways.
Yes. So they all go to Earth 7 because that's where the empty hand who works for the darkness is fighting. That's where the rest of Justice League Incarnate went.
That's where the House of Heroes crashed.
Yeah. So they all go there. We get a big couple of pages. Darkseid stabs the empty hand with the crack, but it turns out that the empty hand wants crack and therefore is superpowered by the crack.
Yep. You could say the crack really sped them up.
I'll come back and all is going on in Darkseid's crack again.
Well, see, Darkseid took the crack from Dr. Multiverse, so now he has the crack. But then he stabs
She was holding the crack.
More than holding, she had consumed the crack and it was hiding inside her. Yes.
Yeah.
So Darkseid pisses it off, and they're basically like, "Oh, we have to find the rest of our team. We have to stop Darkseid." Dr. Multiverse gets all apologetic about kind of turning on them a little bit, but she does genuinely believe that was the right thing to do, was to try and let Darkseid win. And it's like, okay, let's find the rest of the team. But the final page is the rest of the team show up, and they're all infected by the darkness, right? They're all infected by the evil. So. Next issue is the last issue, this book, so I presume it's going to be a big cliffhanger type thing because it's going to lead into Death of the Justice League, or whatever. So, I kind of like most of what this is trying to do, and just try to contextualize where we're going. It's definitely overstuffed though, and I don't know if they need to kind of do a full 2-page layout for all the major crisis.
Yeah.
Because by the time it got to the later ones, it was like, oh my god, you've been describing so many things that have happened.
Every news article about this book is like, oh, it completely recontextualized every crisis. It's the biggest DC book in years.
It's that.
And I'm just like,
no, that's to get clicks, because most of the stuff we already knew.
It recontextualizes it a little bit, and it like the one thing I kind of liked was just right back at the start of it, which is this idea that you know, like Crisis on Infinite Earths was the darkness had infected the Anti-Monitor to try and take everything away because it wanted existence to end. But
right, because the light had chosen the Monitor, right? So it had to. It's also this thing that they talk about, and Pete's gonna hate this in Star Wars and the whole cosmic force stuff.
I don't care about this. What?
No. But this is what that is the same with the light and the dark chooses, you know, avatars, and the light rises up, and it's all very of that. So,
but after it though, when it says, you know, the light and the dark kind of compromised with just one universe, so it wasn't as much existence. I like that part of it because it kind of like turns it into kind of like a sort of a parable almost.
It almost feels like the darkness is editorial.
Yeah. But then it has to kind of like try and make it fit with every single, and I'm like, just say that then throughout time, over and over again, the darkness infected more people, and it's like the influence of the darkness was making them do things. You didn't necessarily have to describe every crisis.
Well, and then with that, it also leaves some for interpretation. Like that's what happened with Flashpoint, was that the darkness kind of won because Barry changed one thing, and it completely rewrote time and history.
Well, yeah, because that was one of the things that it says is that after Final Crisis, the darkness realized the main threat was superheroes, because superheroes were the thing that kept stopping him, or not him, but stopping it.
Right.
And so the idea is that New 52 weakens the heroes because it takes away their history and makes them weak. So I was like, okay, that's not a bad little thing to throw in, but
isn't that kind of what we got in Doomsday Clock anyway?
Well, it is, and it was better than Doomsday Clock. Yeah.
But and that's what I said. This feels very redundant, and that's fine because I know what Williamson's going for. I mean, this is very, you know, like we've got this for every kind of since. When was it where they decided that everything was canon? Was that at the end of Convergence? I can't remember, but it was like Crisis on Infinite Earth happened, but it also didn't happen. And like we've gone through this with Metal and Death Metal and all these other ones, you know. So again, it feels like this is just what DC is right now.
It's just a recap. I mean, ultimately,
we're just gonna keep recapping the events of the DC universe every big story.
It's mostly a recap. But don't get me wrong, I like a little bit of the recontextualization, just and not because I think it's better or anything necessarily than what it was without it, but just because, okay, you're making it fit a little bit into what's coming up and what they're doing soon. That makes sense. But it just, you know, it was just a bit too much, ultimately. And the back half is just kind of as what it's been, with the possible backdoor of like the maybe death of Flashpoint Batman, which is probably just leading to his part in the Flashpoint mini that's coming up. But yeah, so it was an experience to read. I'll say that much. So
was it good?
I mean, do you get to see Darkseid legitimately or like actually stomped out?
Yeah,
that's how he goes out.
And there's a lot of crack being taken back and forth, and
yeah, I did like there was a line where President Superman and Dr. Multiverse are arguing about stuff, and Captain America's like, "Hey, we get it. You guys dated for a little bit. All right, let's get on the same page here." I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah.
Yeah, and the art's all over the place because there's like too many artists, and it's changing constantly. So there's very little to get attached to art style wise, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that any of it stuck out as being particularly notable. You know? No. So there you go. What are you giving him, Matt?
Yeah, this is a 7.
That sounds about right for you. I think. Yeah, I'm going with 6.5, I think. I think it's just a little bit too messy in places and a bit overstuffed, even though I don't hate all the things that it's actually sort of trying to set up or establish. So, we'll see.